Hi, my name is Shruti Sharma, and I'm a PhD student at University of Georgia. And thank you and welcome to this presentation. The title of my paper is Training and Changing Gender Attitudes, Evidence from Randomized Evaluation in Rural Nepal. This is written in collaboration with Professor Sarah Jensen from University of Illinois, Nicholas Magnan from University of Georgia, and Connor Mullally from University of Florida. So let's get started. Training programs have been well established development policies to build human capital and increase labor market opportunities. However, it's access to women and women participation rate in this training program has been very low. And this is because of limited mobility, disproportionately being responsible for childcare and household chores, and cultural norms that dictate women as homemaker and men as breadwinner. These gender attitudes are deeply rooted in all societies and are very difficult to change. However, recent studies have provided evidence that these could be shifted in progressive direction, especially information interventions such as providing promotional video about job opportunities to women have led an increase in women employment to reduce family opposition, and another regular classroom discussion about gender equality between young girls and boys have increased young women's support for progressive gender attitude. A recent study evaluating impact of depositing women wage directly into their account and financial training have found that women become more accepting of female work, and there has been perceived lower social cost to having a wife who works. So based on that, we provided a training called Community Animal Health Worker Training to rural women. We call it CAW. So a CAW person is a government certified agent that provides basic veterinary service like vaccination, examination, and medicine. And this is quite an intensive training. It's 35 days long, and you have to go to a training center. You sit through classroom instruction, and you go through practicals with animals, and then you finally sit down for a final exam. And once you pass that, you get a certificate. So this paper investigates whether training intervention for rural women can shift the gender attitudes in progressive direction for the female candidate who was invited to the training, a male relative, which usually is the husband, father-in-law, or father, and female relative, which could be mother-in-law or mother. So we want to see if access to such training or completing such training can shift their gender attitudes in progressive direction. Further, are there any progressive spillover effect of having a female in the cooperative? So we look for role model effect also. So we conducted an RCT in 105 cooperatives in rural Nepal. The eligibility criteria to participate in this training was that you have to be 18 to 35-year-old, you need to be married, and at least 8th grade education. This is a government-based requirement of education. So we started with 300 eligible candidates and we conducted a baseline survey in November 2018. And in the end, we randomly assigned 150 to treatment group and 150 to control group. The actual training took place in May and June 2019, and we did a follow-up survey in October 2020. So women dropping out, couldn't contact some women. And so finally we had a treatment of 139 in treatment, and control we had 137, and 67 women actually completed the training. So we had a completion rate of almost 48%, which is good. So the gender attitude variable is constructed using 7 subcategories: women working outside, attitudes about women working outside, female mobility, household decision making, chore sharing, preference for son, acceptance of IPV, and acceptance of female call. And in the end, I aggregate them all into a one gender attitude index using the inverse covariance weighted standardized indices. So yes. So we have 7 individual categories and 1 aggregate gender attitude index. I estimate ITT, which is basically the impact of invitation to training on candidates who were nominated by her cooperative to become a cause. So basically I'm measuring the impact of access to training on gender attitudes. And I also estimate late, which is basically the impact of becoming a cause on candidates who were invited to the training as compared to the candidates who were not invited to the training and did not attend the call. And we instrument becoming a call on being invited to the training. I'm just going to go quickly through this because this is pretty basic. So let's move on to the result. So the impact of training on candidates' gender attitude. If you will see, we have two models, ITT model specification, ITT and late, and we also calculate ITT PDS lasso, which is basically we include host double selection method to select control variables. So first we have ITT and then ITT PDS lasso and then late and late PDS lasso. So column 1 to 7 are the individual subcategories, and column 8, the last column, is the overall candidate gender attitude index. So if we just look at the column 8, we see the coefficients are negative. However, they are not significant. So training overall did not have impact on overall gender attitude of these candidates. However, the women working outside home index column 1 and decision making index have some significant results, and when we go and explore more, we find that these results are driven by regressive statements. So wherever when we ask regressive statements, the women in treatment control group are more regressive, and this is what is driving the results. Because if we only look at the progressive statements, they are making actually they are more progressive. But reminding the regressive statement in some way is reminding them of the gender attitudes and making them more regressive. We also look at heterogeneous treatment effects for women who are financially constrained. I define financially constrained as a woman who belong to a poor family and also had no control over income at baseline. So they have no income at home, and they don't have their own income, and they don't have a high income family. So they are really in like area where they need to go out and work. And we look at the impact of such training on these women, and we see a differential effect for them and positive effect, especially for decision making and preference for son. And even overall candidate gender attitude index is significant and positive. And it's the result is consistent for ITT PDS lasso, and women who complete the training, the late and late PDS lasso, which basically tells us that women from high income families or who already had some income source to start with, there was no impact on them. But women who didn't have any income source or didn't have any opportunity to work, this treatment training could trigger some kind of positive gender norms in them and made them progressive. I also look at spillover effect of female call on control candidates. So as you can see, the first row, female call in the village, there is positive impact on female mobility index and chore sharing index for the control group's gender attitude. But we don't see any overall impact. So there is some positive impact, but this is mainly limited to female mobility and chore sharing index. Now next we look at male relative gender attitudes. The training had a positive impact on acceptance of female call for ITT PDS lasso, late and late PDS lasso. However, we do see negative impact on female mobility index, which basically can be interpreted as an increased sense of protection for women when they go out, or when they had the chance to go out and work. And yes, so the limited mobility is the gender attitudes about mobility can be seen how restrictive it is when asked to the male relative. The impact on female relatives gender attitude, we see no impact. There is no general trend in there. So yes, there is no impact on female relatives attitudes. They were a little more conservative to start with. So the main finding is there is no impact of invitation to training on candidates' gender attitude. Candidate who completed the training reported a conservative gender about decision-making power and son preference. And these results are driven by responsive to regressive statement. Uh, uh, my 10-minute time is up, and so I will just wrap up quickly. However, completing the training improves gender attitude about acceptance of female core. Candidates who belong to financially constrained environment and baseline reported overall progressive gender attitudes, and there was positive spillover effect, but this was limited to female mobility and chore sharing. The invitation to training had no impact on male relative and female relative gender attitude overall. So to conclude, in the short term, the training intervention is not sufficient to reshape gender attitudes. Combining this training with maybe gender sensitization information sessions for candidates and for family might bring a positive impact. So the future research can look into this. Better targeting these programs to economically marginalized women can potentially bring broader social change. So as more financially constrained women updated their attitudes just through invitation to training. Future work, this is what we're doing right now. We are doing some qualitative data collection to explore the reason what are driving candidate gender attitude in conservative direction and test if these results change or persist in long run. Yes, so that's it. Thank you so much. And I look forward to question and feedbacks. Thank you.